G'day, today we're going to be talking about seized pumps. Now quite often people are going to get a pump and the wheel just won't turn at all. More than likely, first thing you'd look at is it a metric pump and does it have a cast iron gland? Now what happens with the cast iron gland, if the pump sits for a long time, this part inside here is going to flake a little bit, rust a little bit, and it clamps onto that shaft. That's usually the biggest cause of seizing. If that happens, then best thing to do is undo these two bolts, and you should be able to hold that entire head, and you'd have to wind the head off, and it'll undo from the piston that's inside there. You got a piston there that screws into it, and it'll just unwind because it's being held so tight inside here that it's not going to come out. That's the only way to get it off there. Now other things that can cause seizing is water getting in on this shaft here and right inside the oil. More than likely though, it's not that common, and if that does happen, you can usually you start getting it rocking, moving, and then it'll eventually work its way free. If you're checking as to see what's seized here, and you can move this wheel a little bit, but there's no movement here. First things first is make sure that this screw is on that shaft tight enough, and you're not just spinning the wheel on the shaft. Now, if you find that you're able to, sometimes you can get a bit of a turn one way and then not the other, and it'll make a god-awful clunk and then lock up sort of thing. It's more than likely then your eccentric strap has broken, and the actual eccentric is moving around and sort of hitting it, pieces of it in the gearbox sort of thing, and it's just locking up that way. Because then after a while you give it a bit of a shake or something, and you can start moving it again, but you're not going to get any movement over here. Also, of course, another thing you may come across is that it could actually be the motor that seized itself and not the actual pump. So if there's a motor on there, take the belt off first, because chances are it might be the motor itself, especially if it's gone through flooding and things like that. So if you find you've got zero movement and you've taken the head off already and it hasn't changed anything, if your seizing is inside this side, you're going to have to take off the wheel, take off your bearing plates. It's probably all going to be quite sticky and a bit messy and rusty, but it's the only way you're going to, and you'll see that on my other video with the main overhaul. I do all of that end in anyway.